What's up, y'all? So today we're talking about the silver era of bodybuilding, the positives and negatives from that era. So guys like Steve Reeves, Steve Stenko, John Grimmick, Reg Park, what are the positives from their training style and the way they ate and everything that they did to develop the incredible physiques that they had? What can we take away from that? But also, what are the negatives? What were they potentially missing out on that we can do better? Now, the first positive is that we can be reasonably certain that they were natural, that they were lifetime drug-free. Now, I'm a naturally very skeptical person, and I used to be very, very skeptical about the claims that everyone from that era was actually drug-free. But after looking into the available information, I think they were. I really do think they were lifetime natural. In the 1930s, for sure. Even into the 1940s, I would say it's pretty much a slam dunk. Into the 1950s and especially into the 1960s, all bets are off. And so the 1940s and 1930s, that era, this is basically the last time in human history that we can be reasonably certain that they were actually natural. So if you are natural, I think this is certainly a huge positive. Another positive is that fitness was really about fitness back then. It was about health. It was about being functional, even though I hate that word. It was about being able to do stuff with your body and move and live well. Nowadays, a lot of it is more about vanity. It's just about appearance. For these guys, that was almost like a byproduct of their training and lifestyle, not the actual goal. I mean, it was the actual goal when they're going into a competition, but nowadays it seems like how you look is much more of a focus. Another positive takeaway is that they focused on basic movements. So the barbell movements, the dumbbell movements, just basic shit. Squat, bench, deadlift, overhead presses, barbell rows, lateral raises, flies, some rear delt stuff. Just the basics done well and done hard. So there was definitely an emphasis on progressive overload, typically using a more moderate rep range. So powerlifting was kind of a thing, but it wasn't nearly as popular as it was, or as it has become today. And so people trained like bodybuilders, so more moderate rep ranges, slightly higher volumes, etc. There also seemed to be an emphasis on auto-regulation that is sort of making a comeback over the past 5 to 10 years. I don't know why it ever left. Auto-regulation is just going by feel. It's trying to regulate your training based on how you feel on that day or that week or in that moment. And this is absolutely essential. Back then, if you weren't getting a good feeling in the muscle or you weren't progressing or you felt tired or beaten up, you just took a day off or even a week off. So training was a lot more relaxed. It wasn't as obsessive as a lot of people take it today. And I think in the long term, that is almost certainly a good thing. Nutrition was pretty basic. A lot of them didn't really have all that much of an understanding of why things worked. They just knew that it did work. So they had an emphasis on protein. Again, they're probably not like, this amino acid causes this because of this neuroreceptor. No, they ate whole, normal, natural foods in moderation and got really fucking good results from it. Meat, eggs, dairy, whole grains, fruits, vegetables. They didn't demonize many foods, but they did seem to avoid like packaged processed foods or really, really hyper palatable sugary bullshit, which I think on the whole is probably a good idea for most people. And I read this comment on a video by Golden Era Bookworm, really, really good channel. I'll link in the description. Tons of good content from the silver era, golden era, all this time, lots of training stuff, diet stuff, tons of good information here. But the comment says, health first, strength second, appearance last. We have that exactly in reverse in this era. So in a lot of ways, priorities are kind of switched, which I think is probably not the best thing. Now let's talk about the negatives, or not necessarily the negatives, just maybe what these guys missed, or why these guys absolutely do not represent some type of limit or the pinnacle of what a human being can or should be able to achieve. The first would be that they didn't really have access to the same type of machines or equipment in the gym. Now, I don't think this is absolutely going to be a massive difference. You're not going to get like an extra couple points of FFMI from, using some particular machine, but I do think that this can help bring up some weak points, and it can absolutely be a worthy and worthwhile addition to your training to maybe eke out some small gains that they might have been missing out on from only doing basic barbell and dumbbell movements. Not a total game changer, but it might have an extra couple percent here and there. And their knowledge of biomechanics was more instinctive and less defined than it is now. So they knew, I do this in a pull-up, and so, it's working the back because that's what I feel, and that's what makes sense, that is following the fibers and stuff like that.
However, one good thing is that these silver era badasses weren't a bunch of pussies who thought that sleeping in the wrong position would suddenly kill their gains. And so in some ways, having a more rudimentary approach and just working hard and not worrying about how motherfucking fragile their bodies were led to actually better results than a bunch of the bitches in the gym today. Right?
What's up, guys? Geoff Cavalier, AthleanX.com.
But it wasn't nearly as nuanced as today. Again, this isn't going to be a huge difference, but I do think it can be a small deciding factor. One other factor is that often these guys' limits, in terms of like fat-free mass index that people reference, often it was at a pretty young age. So these guys who were sometimes like 20 years old or 23 years old or something like that, and people are like, oh man, like 25 FMI, this is a limit or something. They don't realize they'd only been training like 5 years or something like, 6 years or 7 years. That's not really a limit for anyone. Often these guys would take time off after a competition or in some kind of off season. This definitely can affect your long-term progress. Not night and day, but certainly it can be a factor. Muscle growth returns fairly quickly, but still, I do think you're missing something if you're taking several months off each year. Nutrition and supplementation, again, their diet was pretty basic, but I don't think that's going to be a massive factor. I really don't think like you're going to get massively better results just from micromanaging your diets or like, combining this protein source with this and then, maybe the timing in this. I really don't think that's going to be gonna be getting you massive amounts of extra muscle that you wouldn't otherwise get. And in terms of supplements, a little bit, right? Like, how much muscle is your pre-workout actually getting you? A little bit, like none. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know of any long-term research on pre-workouts or and anything you get from whey or casein or something like that, you could get from Whole Foods, as well as getting in your micronutrients. Another factor is that for lower body, it wasn't as much of an emphasis, and nowadays there is just more weight placed on the thigh development, the hamstring development, adductors, and especially glutes. Big glutes back then was not really as much of a thing, at least on a guy. Another huge factor that a lot of people don't talk about are your expectations and comparing yourself to those who came before you. These guys were the forefathers. They were the front runners. They didn't really have much to compare themselves to. Nowadays, we know not only what they did is possible, but that they could do better, and we can do better as well. So,
you've got to do better,
lifter.
So I think these guys are a good sort of base level of what you can aspire to, but they should not be thought of as a limit. Bodybuilding was even more of a niche sport back then. It just wasn't really much of a thing, and the talent pool or the genetic pool that was actually doing it was pretty damn small. And if you look at what people have achieved naturally since then, it's actually pretty damn startling, especially if you look at outliers like Ronnie Coleman, Kai Green. I mean, Kai Green at 18, when he was almost certainly natural, he could barely afford food. I mean, there are some guys who are just absolutely freaky. And of course, comparison goes both ways. One thing that I've noticed is that because steroids have become so common, people downplay what is actually possible naturally. And this really is a shame. I get people who swear, like they're just absolutely fucking certain that there's no way that I could achieve the physique that I have naturally. They can't be convinced no matter what. And yeah, this is flattering, but it's even more just straight up sad. So I think for most people, the silver era physiques, it's a reasonable goal because they messed up a lot of stuff and still got incredible results. And this look is very, very sustainable and certainly achievable for a lot of guys, probably more than a lot of guys think. And we should not look at this as some kind of human muscular genetic potential or anything like that, because this is not the pinnacle of what is achievable. It's pretty good. It's aesthetic as fuck, yeah, but as some kind of limit, I reject that entirely. All right, that is all for this video. Make sure to grab a copy of my book if you want to know more about how to optimize the training side of things, which is the biggest side of things. Like the video if you want to like it. No pressure, no pressure. Subscribe to the channel if you were not already for some strange reason. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Cake.